This is Comic Shenanigans, episode 1092, Creator Spotlight on Zeb Wells.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. I'm your host, Adam Chapman. This is episode 1092. It's a new thing we're doing here. It's a creator spotlight on Zeb Wells, but we're doing something a little bit different. First, before I get into what we're doing today, I'm going to formally say that I'm being joined by my co-host for these episodes, Nathan Struck. Nathan, say hello.
Hello.
So we're doing something a little bit different this time around. We're doing a creator spotlight, but in particular, I thought it'd be interesting, and maybe it won't be interesting, but I thought it would be interesting as an exercise to go onto the Grand Comics database, or comics.org, and look at a specific creator, and then look at what their kind of first credited kind of bigger work that we can see on their list of credits, their most recent one, as well as something that kind of fits somewhere in the middle in terms of how many things that are listed on their page as projects they've been working on. So today we're going to talk about a creator that is definitely a favorite of both mine and Nate's, which is Zeb Wells. So we're talking about three specific books from really three very specific eras of Zeb Wells, one would say. We're talking about Tangled Web number 12, Savage Wolverine number 7, and Amazing Spider-Man 60. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 60 was just in the past year. Savage Wolverine, I believe, was around 2007 or so. And then the first one we're doing, Tangled Web, is way back in the early 2000s. And it's interesting, the first two books we're talking about, the Savage Wolverine and the Tangled Web, are definitely in the first era of Zeb. Zeb kind of stepped away from comics and then came back. And then, so the last one we're going to talk about is kind of an interesting point because it's both in the second era of Zeb, but also the most recent thing he's done, and we haven't seen him do anything in a little bit now, and so I'm curious if he's coming back to comics, or if he's doing some, obviously he's been working on movies and TV, etc., so maybe he's not coming back for a little while. Maybe we have to wait for Zeb 3.0. So, Nate, had you read this particular issue of Tangled Web before?
Yes, I own it.
Okay.
I was picking up Tangled Web after the first three issues. What is that, thousands installed, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't love the art, the vibe. It's a horror. It has a horror, part of the horror genre, and I just really wasn't into that at the time. So I didn't know what it was. I kind of just, and Garth Ennis, I wasn't reading him either. So I bounced off of it and then got into it with, I think Greg Rucka is issue 4, if I'm not mistaken. And then we get into like Flowers for Rhino. It's just like a lot of really great little stories. So I was following it from that point on, and I picked this one up too. So I have the single issue of this. Yeah.
Oh, I did not realize or expect that you actually had the single issue of this.
Yeah. I think I did Tangled Web until the end. I think it was canceled. I went. I think I had every issue except for the first 3, and now I kind of think I should go back and get them.
I don't know when I first read this particular issue. I definitely didn't own, I think, any of the singles for Tangled Web besides issue 4, which I always thought was one of the best ones, the Severance package.
Fantastic.
Issue, which is, it's a terrifying issue, but really well done. What I thought was so interesting reading this over again, I don't understand why this exists in this way, because there already was this character. This character already existed, had already been introduced by J.M. DeMatteis. We already got an origin for him. This contradicts that original origin, also changes the character's last name for whatever reason. So I just kind of was really struck by not understanding what the decision was by the editor and Zeb to write this story that in theory had already been told before. So I don't know if I really understood it.
I didn't know about Leapfrog before reading the issue. It was my introduction, obviously, for Zeb. I mean, a lot of I don't want this to come across as critical, I suppose, but a lot of what he does is stuff from his childhood, from his early reading days, and he loves to tell his own versions of stories about them, or to do a riff, or to kind of reimagine them. Most recently, his Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man run notwithstanding, I mean, there's tons of stuff in there, right, that he loves, like Hobgoblin and so on. But like for me, it was Hellions, right? Like he's kind of like the only person who could really have done that book, and Nanny and Orphan Maker, and he's just bringing back all these characters that he loved reading in the 80s. And so my assumption is in the 70s or 80s, he read an issue with Leapfrog and thought it was a hilarious. They can see it as hilarious, so it works with his comedic chops and his timing. So this was my introduction to the character and his app.
Fascinating. Now, from obviously he's spoken before about how and this is just a few years ago, he was like, I don't know if I really know how to write comics. Like, he was just, in terms of how he kind of lays out his pages on like whiteboards and trying to like come up with how to pace things. So it is interesting to look at the pacing of an issue like this. And I mean, obviously it's very much a Tangled Web issue. It's very tangentially related to Spider-Man. Spider-Man makes an appearance, but it's kind of, even then, it feels very comedic, it felt very much in the line of the Commuter Cometh classic story by Peter David, that Spider-Man kind of in a place where he doesn't belong. Like, he has to get a cab home, like he has to call, and like all this stuff is kind of played for humor. But really it's more about, the angst of this guy who's basically, which I think is very interesting character dynamic, is that it's very relatable. It's that, what do you do when you're kind of picked on and people make fun of your dad and for your dad's job, whatever that might be. Like, It's interesting. I'm a big fan of Boy Meets World, and like that character of Sean on that show, his dad becomes a janitor at the show, and everyone kind of makes fun of him because he's the janitor's son. So I thought a lot of interesting parallels, that's essentially what this story is that what do you do when your dad is embarrassing to you as a kid, and then how do you start to reconcile with that now that you start to see your parent a different way, that you try to do something with that legacy that he's left you. So I do really enjoy it. Again, just from a process standpoint, wonder why it existed, because we'd already kind of had this, like a version of this origin story in the past. That being said, I did think he did a very good job with it.
But Eugene is new, right? Eugene, the son's a new character.
No?
No? Oh, okay.
Like, this summer, they are finally publishing the omnibus collection of J.M. DeMatteis's Spectacular Spider-Man run. And in that particular run, he has this great storyline called The Child Within. It's really hard-hitting. There's a lot of stuff about like child abuse and like the sins of the father, how they are visited upon the sons, and all this kind of really deep stuff. And so right at the end of that, you have Spider-Man going home, and this green hand grabs him, and he's like, goes around thinking it's the Green Goblin about to punch him, and it's the Fabulous Frogman. And it's just like, hiya, Spidey. And so it's very much played for humor. So like, this character definitely did exist before.
So in that story, Eugene the son is like a child, and now the teenage version of him is something Zeb is playing with, or he was always a teenager?
He was always a teenager. He was always kind of a late teen. And he was Frogman. So there's Leapfrog, and then he becomes Frogman.
Okay. So, really, he just uses the main conceit as a way to do his own, Boy Meets World or Freaks and Geeks story, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's good. It's well written. I did find myself invested in the Eugene character, and as he's trying to kind of figure things out. And I really liked, again, how he starts to look at his dad a different way once his dad kind of sticks up for him. So I thought that was really interesting to kind of, he's always thought of his dad as a joke, but suddenly his dad, is able to kind of command respect from people who are terrorizing him, and how he starts to view his dad differently. So I did really like those kind of moves. But yeah, like, as I said, Eugene had existed as a character before.
But I guess that's the freedom of Tangled Web, right? Like that's what they gave them. Like, you can do whatever you want. Like, no one's going to mention in continuity Flowers for Rhino. That's like never going to be brought up as something that is part of the Marvel Universe. This is kind of the anthology format allows them to break free, I suppose, in that way. In a way that Marvel would do a lot more, with other projects like the Max series and stuff like that, where they're like, no, this is really, no one's going to mention the fact that like Wolverine is swearing like a sailor in this issue, even though it'll be censored in other comics. He's really going to say it here. I think you mentioned some of Zeb's interviews you've had with him, and I was thinking about this issue because I remember him in one of your interviews talking about his introduction to comics and his entree, if you will, and how he said one of the things that he kind of cringes at now is he thinks he over-dialogued it. He into like really but way too much dialogue on it and didn't let the artist kind of have room to breathe. It's something to that effect. And you can definitely pick up on that when you read this issue, that there's just it's heavy on dialogue. There are some of the panels where it's almost like the artist had to kind of like there's a corner of the panel the artist gets to use because they were aware of so much text. And that is different. I mean, especially as we're reading through his, beginning and middle and up to current his career, you can definitely see him grow as a writer and back off from this. He's still very gabby. He's still an artist, a creator who really likes dialogue, but even the narrative, like there's way more narrative boxes here, I think, than you'll see from Zeb ever after this.
True. Although I think part of that is probably just a symptom of comics in general moving away from them. So in general, we see less of them. I wonder as well, like this definitely feels like an early 2000s comic, because I think there was almost like this readjustment that happened in and around this period where in the 90s, art was everything. Not necessarily storytelling, but art was everything. And it was artist first, right? And it definitely felt like at times they were like, well, we're going to get you with the big splashy art. And then you had this kind of really abrupt kind of shift where now it was writer first, or at least it felt that way as a reader at the time, especially at Marvel. So you got heavily dialogued comics. Like if you read, as much as he brought a lot of energy back to the book and brought eyeballs back to the book, Kevin Smith's Daredevil,
Guardian Devil, yeah,
excessively wordy, because that's what Kevin Smith does. You don't bring Kevin Smith on a project, especially at that time, and don't expect that you're going to get the dialogue. You're going to get his words. So I feel like there was a movement at that time that art writers were kind of reasserting themselves, and so this feels like of that period. So I don't know if that's as much a symptom of Zeb specifically, or that, as you mentioned, like that's something he is diagnosed of himself, but also I just think it's how editorial was handling things at the time, and they were less worried about it, and they wanted more words on the page, and there was maybe a little bit less of a focus on the art itself.
Oh, and I was a big art guy in the mighty Marvel way, but also the Image way, right, of the splash pages and the the action poses and some of the cheesecake stuff. And so for me, this issue, the cover grabbed me, great, like kind of painted cover. But the art is, and the colors are just so good. Like now with my adult eyes, my current eyes, Vigretto is really, really good. And he's doing his own colors. So like this splash page of I Was a Teenage Frogman, the colors and the kind of almost like acid trip, kind of very psychedelic bubbles, the purple and the green, look great together. Nice, deep, thick inks to go with the colors. It just makes the colors really pop. Like it's such a good looking book. The expressions on the characters' faces go a long way, especially the exchanges between Eugene and his father. I love this issue for the art.
Yeah, I really appreciated how much detail and depth there was in the art. Like it felt like when Eugene kind of walks in and sees his dad sitting at the the table in the kitchen, it felt like a very lived in space. It didn't feel like very generic. It felt much more like, yeah, this is what this kind of place would look like. It felt very lived in, and so I thought, especially I feel like modern backgrounds are a lot more scant. And they're not usually as detailed, or they lean on the colorist to kind of do more of the work. Whereas this felt like every space felt lived in. The character models all felt very like real people, and a lot of different types of people. I liked the kind of the different phases that the father goes through in terms of what he looks like. Like sometimes he does look like broken down. Sometimes he looks a little bit more, proud of Eugene and what Eugene's starting to do. Like it's interesting to see the character work and that there's acting happening on these pages thanks to the art.
And great continuity, like in the scene where Eugene puts the costume on and he goes and he leaps about and he lands on his butt, and you can see this kind of spark as he skids along the street. And then as he leaps away, there's a nice low angle shot up at the moon and the trees as he leaps through the air, kind of like flailing. And the rump on his costume is torn. And when he falls down in front of like the kids at the convenience store, he does so on his back, and his butt with just torn up costume is like, he's coming in there like butt first, and it's just, and then they start kicking the crap out of him. Like it's just a great continuity, the car that his dad is driving is junked up and destroyed. The lockers in the school look grimy and grody, like you might expect from, lockers that don't necessarily get replaced or cleaned up very consistently. When Eugene's being led to the car, there's like the Slurpees that are still on the ground that have been discarded. Like the attention to detail is tremendous in this.
Absolutely. Now, it's interesting to note, so this would have come out May 1st, 2002. So this is the same week as the Spider-Man movie. So it's interesting to think that, like, someone, if they leave the Spider-Man movie and they go look at the Spider-Man comic rack and, like, this is on the rack, what a fascinating and odd comic this would be for someone to be like, I want to pick up more Spider-Man, and then reads this story.
And Spider-Man's in only a few panels, but he's on the front cover, right? Like he should be, how to sell a comic.
Mm-hmm.
Very attractive cover for that too. Yeah, so it's what a great time and place to come out of the movie and pick this up and go, what is any of this?
So that's 2002. We jump forward 11 years. Now we got Savage Wolverine number 7. So I'm really curious what your thoughts were on this. We're in the middle of an arc, right? This is like part 2 of 3. So we're kind of jumping right in the middle of the action. And it's interesting from an artistic perspective. We go from someone who's very methodical and detail-driven and really telling a quiet story, and we go to Joe Madureira, who is not that. And much more louder, bombastic action. But again, not the Joe Mad that we grew up with and really fell in love with in the 90s, but now it's the return Joe Mad. So I'm curious what you thought of this issue of Savage Wolverine, which again is Savage Wolverine number 7.
Is this not the first issue of it? I thought this was issue 1 of this arc.
No, I don't think so. Because it mentions last month, and it makes it sound like that was the beginning of the story. I could be wrong.
Okay. I have the collection for this, which I didn't read in the collection. I just have this all up on the Marvel Unlimited app. But, so I've read this, and, Joe Mad and Zeb Wells, of course, you couldn't stop me. I have read this arc, and I've enjoyed it. Nice snappy banter. Again, it opens with that kind of Zeb leading with humor, which is nice to see. 2 guards just having a chat about, I think it's affecting my relationship, not talking about where I work, and we're clearly working for some ne'er-do-wells, and then it just goes right into the action. And again, you have Elektra. He's a fan of Elektra. Clearly, one of my favorite series of all time is Dark Reign Elektra. Clay Mann on pencils there. I have an original piece of art actually right in front of me from that, issue 1, page 19. So he likes using her, and I do like his restraint with her. Very little dialogue. She's just more of a force of nature. Even Logan is like, thanks for saying something, right? Like you're not really opening up here, and Logan is not really known himself for being very chatty. It's a fun, colorful issue. Joe Mad's doing some storytelling. It's not really his forte. He's mostly good at the action poses and the splashes. But I love to see a Spider-Man. I really enjoy it. It reminds me of the Uncanny cover that I love so much. He drew the interiors for the Spider-Man issue with Marrow.
346 or 347?
Sounds familiar. He's smaller here, though. He's very small here. There's actually scenes where, like this one, I don't know what page it is, but Elektra's crawling in through a window, and the bottom panel shows Peter with Logan, and they're like the same height. It really shouldn't be that way. Peter's like 5'10", and Logan's 5'3". So he's small and slight, and it's almost a teenage vibe that Zeb gives him. Which again, I'm not really going to police continuity, but this is not the Peter that you would normally read in New Avengers. But lots of personality. I love how Joe Matt draws the eyes. Lots of expressions, very evocative with the eyes. So that characterization of Peter aside, still really fun and full of fun action and punching and claws and Lady Bullseye and very angry Kingpin.
So it's interesting. We actually read different issues. So as you're describing, that's okay. So you're describing issue 6. You have issue 6, and I have issue 7.
Oh my goodness! Did you say 7 in your text?
I mean, I'm hoping I did because now I'm not sure about it. But
okay.
It's okay either way. I can glimpse through issue 6 and see what you're mentioning. It is
Still
interesting.
the same era for Zeb, right? So it counts.
Yeah, it still counts. It's interesting. Looking at what we talked about with Tangled Web, it feels like he's definitely learned to get out of his way and get out of his artist way, and he's definitely leaning into the fact that like he knows Joe Mad is the artist on this book, so he knows what Joe Mad can do. So he's putting in dialogue boxes where he needs to, but he's not over dialoguing. He's definitely showing restraint, as you said, especially using characters like Elektra and not kind of over dialoguing because that just wouldn't fit her. And so you do get a more smooth reading experience, especially because again, if you're going to have someone like Joe Mad, you're going to let him do big, bombastic, fun action. You're going to have him make everyone looks amazing, and all the action is going to be big, bold, and exciting. And that is true of both issues, both 6 and 7. The storyline is kind of interesting. I don't remember the context around it, except that you have them end up kind of working for Kingpin, which is an interesting kind of conceit. I forgot that Kingpin lived in Shadowland at this point. It's interesting how much weird discarded continuity you'll see when you go back and read random books and be like, oh yeah, kind of remember that. But overall, I thought it was a smooth, breezy read. It wasn't as heavy on characterization, but I don't think that was the remit of the book. I think the book was, let's let Joe Mad go wild and let's tell an entertaining story.
Yeah. No, it's a fun series. I mean, if anyone out there enjoys the work of Joe Mad and likes the Spider-Man Wolverine thing, it's a fun crossover.
So next up then is something very different, which is Amazing Spider-Man 60, which is the end of the Zeb Wells Amazing Spider-Man run, which, to be fair, I don't believe you've actually finished that run. I know you started the run. At some point, I think you stopped buying the trades or were going to buy them later, or I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened either. I was trying to get them, just making sure I got them on sales. And I think what happened is I just started prioritizing Epics and getting Epics on sales because the prices of Epics were just kind of going up. And then now, recording this in May of 2025, I wish I was even more aggressive on Epics based on the prices going up or whatever. So, I had just taken a pause on lots of the smaller trades, so more of the modern trades, including some of the Krakoa stuff, which I still have to get. So a lot of that kind of ended up being wait for later. I still plan to get them. I'd like to finish that off just to have, but I have not read this. No, I don't have this yet.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are of this. So now he's paired with, a bunch of different artists throughout the book. There's a bunch of different stories. The lead story is with John Romita Jr. So I'm curious how you felt that they worked together, considering you do remember how they started the run, like they worked on the first arc especially. So I'm curious what your thoughts or takes were on how they worked together here.
I mean, love it. I mean, that's just, modern John Romita. He's less gritty than he was, certainly, in like the mid to late 90s. Just again, we had just read the Batman Punisher crossover, and the rain and the grit and the grime is there. Spider-Man 72, one of my favorite issues, Onslaught crossover, and like picking up disgusting kind of dreck and sewage and just the cross hatching and the so this is much cleaner era for Johnny Jr. and it suits this issue, of course. So they're in court and they're out on the street, so there's not a lot of maybe opportunities for him to do that until you get to a Sandman and he explodes and you get a protracted series of panels of, instead of rain, it's like falling kind of glittering sand. So in the end, he does get his version of grit, some really kind of cool, amorphous, strange body horror almost elements of like tendrily sand. So I still get a little bit of the grit and grime towards the end, but the rest of it is very smooth, nicely articulated character moments, lots of good portraits, facial expressions from John Romita Jr. Really enjoyed it. Good pairing. So the end of this is Aunt May telling him, "I know you're Spider-Man."
I mean, she's not, but I mean, it definitely. I mean, I guess she's.
It feels like an ambiguous. It feels purposely ambiguous.
I feel like it definitely could be read that way, or it could just be him trying to kind of have a button on. She'll stop worrying about him because she understands that like he's doing what he has to do, and so he might be coming up with lame excuses, but it's because he's trying to help Spider-Man. Like at least drawing that connection makes it easier, more palatable, I guess, than just having her know, and just she knows that he's involved and that it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, just for me, having this protracted conversation in close, like, this isn't common. Typically, if Mary Jane, or well, when she doesn't know he's Spider-Man, or Aunt May, or anyone sees him, he's usually in mid-swing. Like, he's aware of the fact that his mask is not going to hide too much. It's not going to disguise too much of his voice. This is uncommon, where he spends, and usually, like in classic comics, Aunt May is like, "Oh, that awful Spider-Man, you get away from here. You don't think about trouble." They are both participating in a conversation, and they are so close. And she says things like, "Leave Peter Parker alone," and he visibly is like shook by it. You know, like so his mannerisms are there. Her nephew, she's known his entire life. He's only blocked by this mask. I don't know. I feel like there, because of the unusualness of this and the amount of time she spends in proximity with him. For me, at least, I like that it's ambiguous. Of course, she's not saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there is a reading here. She's not stupid. Yes, love can blind you, so she can't be blinded to things. But she even says, like, how does she say it? She's like, that's not what I mean. I've done a lot of thinking today, and I realized something I knew, but didn't know I knew. That is a space, at least for me, to kind of go, this is her kind of waking up. Like, there are a lot of opportunities I could have had to realize who you were. Mm-hmm. Maybe I turned a blind eye. Maybe I didn't want to know the answer. But what I'm saying to you now is kind of the same thing. Almost like Tom Holland says to Tony Stark in Civil War. Rather than saying, with great power comes great responsibility, he does this kind of workaround speech, right? Mm-hmm. He's just like, Mr. Stark, when the bad things happen and you don't stop them, but you could stop them, it's kind of like you made the bad things happen. And it's a really nice kind of short form version. It doesn't tell the full origin, but it's like, this is kind of what I'm saying. It's not a moment of her like not saying it but meaning it. But I can definitely see how someone would read this and kind of go, well, that's not happening at all. But that's my spidey sense went off a little bit for this. And it's beautifully either way, drawn beautifully, fantastic colors. I love a good sunset. The only thing that can make this issue better is if two superheroes are talking on a rooftop. But other than that, really enjoyable for me. I really like that the story anyway. This is not the conclusion of the issue, but the story is nice.
I'm curious. I mean, without the context, did you feel like it was getting a full story in like a story unit, so to speak? Just because obviously it's the end of an arc, it's an end of a run. Comics are paced differently these days than they used to be. So I'm curious if you felt like you still got enough of a taste. I mean, you still got a big spider fight. You still got like kind of a meaningful conversation with a supporting cast member, and you do have kind of some plot lines being clipped. I'm just curious if you felt that it was still engaging without having read all the context.
Yeah, I was engaged. I mean, the art's good. The dialogue is very quippy, very easy to follow, very fun. It leads you along. There was no dull moments, really. I mean, maybe the conversation between White Rabbit and Tombstone, because I haven't read this is kind of like whatever for me, but it's quick and pretty. The older I get, of course, I'm really not interested in the big punch-ups. I'm glad this punch-up is short and sweet. I only need a few panels and some fun kind of like little pizzazz if you'd like to break things up, but I am way more interested in the court case and going back and learning what that's about, and the conversation between Peter and May and their little pizza date. That's all the highlights for me. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but if I either wasn't already planning to go back and read the full run or hadn't already read the first few arcs, I would go like, I wouldn't say this story alone was really giving me what I wanted in an issue, but of course it is the denouement, it's the ending of a larger run, so it's fine. And then of course there's multiple stories, right? So I can kind of get a few little vignettes, and some of them are more successful than others for me. I really don't know a whole lot about Rap, and he's just kind of giving a sillier version of Spider-Side, because it's just a spider costume with a mouth on it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's Parker spelled backwards, but other than that, like, I've only read a little bit of a few issues with him in it.
I don't care for Rap. It was just never. It was never.
I don't care either.
I always felt that whenever McGinnis came on the book got zany and not in a way I appreciated, and so I was always kind of like, all right, well, let me know when JR is back.
Yeah. So it's some pretty art. I like McGinnis, but yeah, I'm glad that Rap disappears quickly. That's nice.
You got now. I don't know how much you knew about MJ's status quo at this point in time. So she's a superhero and doing superhero stuff. How did you feel about that story?
Because the original Jackpot wasn't MJ, but this Jackpot is MJ.
Correct.
Because the original Jackpot was a redhead who looked exactly like MJ to mislead the readers that
yes,
it was MJ. And they're like, look at this. The Marvel Universe is full of redheads look the same.
Yep.
This one's not that one.
Nope.
Also, Ben's dating a redhead who's also not MJ, but he called her MJ before, and she got real mad because all the Parkers have the date. Anyway, yeah, I was vaguely familiar with that, and it's interesting, I guess, to give MJ more to do than be a struggling actress who gets to sit at home and smoke because she's stressed that her partner isn't confiding in her. I like giving her something to do. That's fun. Interesting space that they're in, where they're rushing together in a very date kind of way, 2 dates with their actual partners. But when she says, like, this is kind of great, isn't it? Like, fighting a color demon, arguing with Jonah, rushing across town so we don't disappoint our dates. It's fun, right? I'm having fun. I'm glad to be here with you. And he's all like, yeah, it's great. And then she's all like, you came for me. You never gave up on me. I'll always come for you, MJ. Eventually, like, it's like, this is what good couples do. They do activities together. They do fun things together. They bond. I'm always there for you. Like, it's very, I guess meant to kind of suggest to us, like, wouldn't it be great if they were together again? It's kind of, because the audience has that dramatic irony because they know that in multiple universes these two are together. It's interesting that he hangs his hat really on this, how good they really are together. And maybe they've had drama and they've had problems, but maybe all MJ needed was something to do in the same sphere as her partner, right? Like, what if they could be superheroes together? That was always the thing that Felicia had, right? Like, Felicia had that adrenaline surging. We beat up some people in the alleyway, and now we're just, like, super hot for each other. That kind of, like, and she gets him. And that was the thing that MJ didn't have. To give that to her and to really establish, like, how good they are together here. I guess this is good for drama because we really want them to be together now. Then, of course, Chasm's sinister arm is in the foreground, so he's going to ruin things, right? Mm-hmm.
So, a couple quick things. So MJ,
can't leave Chasm alone, can we?
No. MJ, I mean, you're never going to read it, so I don't think it's spoiling necessarily. These days, MJ is now Venom.
Okay.
So why not? So
Venom's been a lady before. It's fine.
Yeah, so she's bonded to the original Venom symbiote. I did like the Wolverine Spider-Man kind of 4-page story. That's after the one with Jackpot. I thought that was really enjoyable and engaging. I like that's just called Bubs by Paulo Rivera, which I thought was beautiful art, very simple. Yeah. That felt very vintage Zeb, just kind of having a moment with these 2 guys, and it's 3 pages, but that 3 pages felt like more because it was fun.
And one is a giant splash, so they get a lot out of it. Yeah, Paulo, that last half-page image of Peter walking away on the rooftops. I love a rooftop. And Logan continuing on the street. Fantastic colors. And Paulo knocks it out of the park. I really like that. And I hope that, like, we got to get Paul to read this. Like, he's got to start calling us Bubs. Like, that's got to be... He calls us individually Bub, but I don't think he does the plural Bubs.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, and then it can also just be, like, a thing you say. Like, we're at the table, we played some Marvel United, he can sit around us, look at us, and kind of nod his head and just kind of go, Bubs. We are Bubs. I think that'd be nice for him.
The Chasm story felt like a letdown because I felt like they got him to a spot and then it's like, oh, I lied. And I'm like, I don't care. Like I was more interested in the lie than in him trying to figure out who he's going to be moving forward than whatever petty, vendetta he can have against Peter.
Because we want him redeemed.
Yes.
And Zeb, whether he is entirely, like, again, I know that there's an editorial, right? Because there's too many good Spider characters. Everyone's good, and everyone's a Spider person, and there's so many. So to add yet another Spider-Man, the choice by editorial, as I understand it, to go, well, he's actually better as a foe. It's more interesting to make him a foil. And it's like, let's do that. He'll be a sinister Spider-Man, like Venom was. And Zeb, and he's talking about this with you in your interviews, like, oh, so you're a Benhead? He's like, I am a Benhead. He's like, well, I'm doing Beyond now, and maybe you won't like all of this. I'm not a Benhead. I read all his stuff to get into him. Again, like, he didn't. That's not a 70s or 80s character. He's not from that era where Zeb is really pulling the stuff that he enjoyed as a burgeoning comics fan. So it's hard to sway him, I guess, in that way to maybe insist editorial. This has to be. We've got to. And so we just, as much as I love Zeb, we've got to wait for another group, another stable of writers, and maybe other editors to really redeem that character, because it seems like he's been the villain for a little while, and he's going to be a villain for a little while longer.
I think I'm at the point where, like, there's been so many iterations of Ben in the last few years that I actually don't care. Like, the Ben I loved, he died. He died in 1996, and I think I'm okay with that. And so they want to do other things with him. They want to make him a villain. That's fine. I am more bothered by it feeling like they are progressing the character and then they just kind of pull the rug out from under you and be like, haha, we didn't. And I'm like, well, don't bother doing that story then. Like, if you want to make him a tortured guy who doesn't like Peter and wants Peter's life, kind of like Kane did at one point, that's fine. Do that. But then don't pretend that you're not doing that, because that's not a real story to me. That's just you kind of lying to the reader and to Peter for no reason. Like, it doesn't add anything. It just feels like he's in the same spot he was before the story started, so what was the point?
Yeah, and for us, it kind of adds insult to injury too, right? Because at least for me, I love Zeb. Obviously, not everything he does I'm going to love, and I don't love the Beyond trajectory that ends in Chasm. But like, it kind of started with Zeb, right? Like, again, he didn't do Beyond on his own, but he was like the lead writer, right? That was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And again, there's editorial here too, but like, I don't know. Like, I kind of hope that, like, maybe Zeb would end his kind of space here, his time here with the Spider books and with Ben, and do that thing, and do the thing that we hope that would happen, where it's like, okay, this is the beginning of redemption arc. Like, I'm going to leave the character. Maybe you didn't like what I did with him in the beginning and the middle there, but here's the end. Yeah, you're right. And to have Zeb be the guy who writes this, like, last Chasm story for him, and it's like, nope, no redemption for you. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, you're right.
Which is fine. He's setting it up for someone else, so someone else can take that toy and play with it and do what they want. And I respect that. He's not putting all the toys back away. He's still got toys on the field that you can play with, which I appreciate. So that was our
the art and the colors though are very nice. Like I think Gleason does a great job. And the purples of the Chasm costume really pop. Lots of nice greens that go with the purples. So yeah, this one scene of him swinging away as Chasm, just really, really beautiful. Like, I got to give it to them. It's, again, not my favorite costume design, but it's not awful. It's got a bit of a Venom kind of thing going on there too. So. We won't talk about the last story just because it's not by Zeb. It's by Joe Kelly. Yeah. So that's our little spotlight on Zeb Wells. So we did the kind of the beginning, the middle, and the most recent. I'm curious to do more of these with either artists or writers, just to get more perspective on kind of how the creators change over time, and how we've seen just with these 3 stories how Zeb has changed his approach, how he's evolved.
become less wordy, learn to trust his artist more, learned how to tailor his stories more to his artist, which I think Amazing Spider-Man 60 is a great example because you have various different stories with different artists, and each one has kind of a different feel to it depending on who's drawing it, right? Like the McGinnis story, it's very short with Rec Rap, but obviously very different in tone from a JR story.
But it's interesting, too, because, like, we didn't talk about any of our favorite stories by him, right?
Nope.
If I were to just think of off the top of my head, Doc Ock Year One, Battling Jack Murdoch, Dark Reign Elektra, add to that maybe Hellions, like there's a number of stories that I, like even his New Mutants arc or run. So it's an interesting experiment that we're doing with this to kind of just cover eras rather than, because I think the go-to, I think most people would say, well, I'll just cover maybe a high and a low, but this is more about like that continuity and more about how they're growing and seeing their stylistic choices. So that's an interesting way to view this. That lens is interesting.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining me for this particular episode. Next month, we'll look at a different creator. Maybe next time we'll do an artist as opposed to a writer. For those listening, you can email us at comicshenanigans@gmail.com. Rate the show on Apple Podcasts. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts and also listen to us on Spotify. And next week's episode, we'll be having Kelly Thompson coming back for her 6th visit to talk about how famous little old It's Jeff is getting. Jeff the Land Shark is really a big character these days. So we talk about that, and we also talk about just how crazy the ride of Absolute Wonder Woman has been for her. But that'll be next episode. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.